it comes to the TV show bodies, I'm going to be completely honest, I think it's probably one of the best TV shows of 2023. Let's get into it. Starting with the positives, the plot itself is very hooking, especially as each episode you go down this rabbit hole of who, why and where, just really getting into the mystery of this entire show and seeing this particular mystery unravelling up until the very end, and it doesn't disappoint. Throughout each of the timelines we explored, there's a lot of underlying themes of discrimination, some of which play a big part of the show. In the very first time period, that being the 1800s, we see rampant homophobia. In the second time period, during World War II, we see anti-Semitism. When we get to the third time period, that being modern day times, it's just blatant racism against those who are not white. That one, compared to the other two, doesn't have a big part in the plot of the show itself. It's just an underlying theme that we notice very early on in the first episode. And then going into the future, we see ableism, which again, like the previous time period, is not as big as the other two, but it still plays a part. And with that one, we notice that if you're not part of the establishment, you do not get the rewards. That's being an able-bodied human being. You are sadly disabled unless you agree to be part of the establishment and somewhat sell out. And it's just interesting to learn that in each of these decades there's discrimination, especially even in the future. Another thing that I've really found quite enjoyable was to see how each of the detectives approach this case. A lot of them really go head in first towards this case, really doing their job, and there's only one detective in particular who doesn't really investigate this case until later, but all of them really do dive into it. And it's just interesting to see that the ones who start off investigating somewhat hit a snag, and the powers above them are trying to stop them in their tracks as they're getting too close to the truth. I really enjoyed that part. And the antagonist of the show is very interesting, as he has created his own Ouroboros, and it's just interesting to see how all the detectives unwillingly are playing into the hand that he has created, and it just seemingly works out so well for him. For me, the most intriguing part of the show is the mystery behind the body that is in this alleyway, as we see the detectives being very baffled with the no exit wound, why the body there is naked, the marking on his hand, but most importantly, why the body is there in each and every decade. To me, that was the most intriguing part of that series. Now, this is something small that I really enjoyed. When the credits end, just as it goes to actually show the show, we see the word bodies appear, and then a image appears on one of the letters of that word, and that image is actually a big clue to the show, and it's only until later on you notice that. I just think that's quite cool. They put such a small detail, which is quite a big reveal in a sense. When it comes to the finale of this series, I have to say I found it to be marvellous, as we see them attempting to break the Ouroboros that the antagonist has created, and one detective has a conversation which makes a huge impact, and it's just really quite fascinating to see how big of an impact this one conversation has. Now, when it comes to criticisms, I'm going to be completely honest, I only really have one, maybe 1.5. The first one is that I'd say the show has a lot of predictable moments, but at the same time, those moments are quite enjoyable, and it's not like they're predictable and it ruins it. It's just like, oh, okay, I was right. It makes you feel a bit like one of the detectives, but at the same time, whilst it has a lot of predictable moments, it definitely takes you by surprise a lot of the time. And then, my second criticism, which I don't really know if you can count it as one, is that we don't get enough of Stephen Graham. I love the actor, I think he's amazing. He doesn't have that much of a role in the first 4 or so episodes, but at the same time, because of the character he is playing, that totally makes sense. And so again, I don't really know if I can count that as a criticism. So overall, I'm fascinated with this show. I think it's amazing, great use of time travel. The mystery behind a lot of this show is amazing to watch, seeing all of these detectives investigating this body and seeing how very different but at the same time very similar the way they investigate. Is this show good? I'd say it's great, possibly amazing. Rating wise, I'd give it a 9 out of 10, and when it comes to would I rewatch it, the answer is yes. I would definitely rewatch this, definitely can see myself watching it in a year or two. Now when it comes to recommendations, I have 3. The first being The Devil's Hour, a Amazon Prime TV show with Peter Capaldi. I can't get into why, because it is quite a spoiler to both shows, but I definitely believe you should check it out. I would say Bodies is better as it's easier to get into. I think The Devil's Hour took some time, but it's definitely more on the horror-esque element than this show. Next, I would recommend Stephen Graham as an actor. I think he's amazing. I feel like performance in this is good, but I don't think we get much of him. For me, the first thing I watched him in, which blew my mind, was him in Line of Duty Series 5. He made that series. He is the best part of that series. Definitely check it out. And lastly, I would say True Detective, specifically Series 1 and Series 3, as very similar to this, they're going through different decades. Obviously in this show it's with different detectives, in True Detective it's the same detectives in different time periods. Definitely check it out. Those are my recommendations. This has been my review for Netflix's new show Bodies. Thank you for watching. If you have enjoyed, please like and subscribe, but most importantly, thank you and have a nice day.